My name is Kyle Hogg, ex-professional cricketer, and I use Buff skincare. Probably been around cricket all my life. Dad and Grandad both played cricket. My Grandad played for the West Indies. Came to England in the 50s with the West Indies, ended up meeting my grandma, lived in England, played for Lancashire. Then my dad played for Lancashire and Warwickshire. My dad played football as well for Barrow in Furness. So I guess sport's always been, my life. So I grew up in Saddleworth in Oldham. All my friends played every sport. Spent our lives down at the local cricket club. Someone to bring the football, someone to bring the rugby ball, someone to have a cricket bat and ball. I was just surrounded by sport all my life. Probably excelled at cricket as a young lad. Was in and around the Lancashire sort of age group squads from under 11 to 16s. I guess like in them days, don't want to sound too old, but there was no such thing as academies, scholarships. You were either on the professional staff or you weren't. So myself and a cricketer, Jimmy Anderson, a few people are very aware of. We signed on the same day for Lancashire at 17. So we were part of 28 professional players. Having come from school, played a bit for Lancashire second team, then all of a sudden I'm in the same dressing room as people I grew up idolising, I guess, watching on TV, Michael Atherton, Neil Fairbrother, like Lancashire legends, and then you find yourself playing in the same team with them as them, very surreal. And then, I went on to play for 14 years for Lancashire, which was, as it goes, having a career that long was, very, very, I look back on it now, very lucky to, be a part of something that I grew up, wanting to do for a living.
Did you ever pinch yourself and realise that, what the hell is actually going on here?
Yeah, I was always aware, as a young lad, that you can be a professional cricketer, but it was weird, I'd only ever seen cricketers on TV, and then to all of a sudden, being around them, playing with them, it was like, I didn't sort of get my head around what being a professional was. It was like, I just turned up, went to Old Trafford, practiced, played matches, went home, and then all of a sudden, I guess as you start to do well as a young lad, you see yourself in, the newspaper, you're playing on TV, all your friends are coming to watch you're getting opportunities to play abroad in the winter. And then I think a few years, they just go, so fast, and you find yourselves in situations that you never probably dreamt of in sport terms. A lot of my friends at the time were at university studying. I remember going to Leeds Uni to meet my mates, and they were like, you can't go in that cupboard, that's someone's bread, that's someone's milk. And then all of a sudden, I'm there as a professional sportsman, taking my friends out for meals. And I think it's you look back now, it's really surreal, but it's also in a blink of an eye, 14 years has gone, and I look back on that career and I think, I can't remember doing half the things, that we did. We'd get to the ground for 8 a.m. You probably go outside at 8:30, warm up at 9. You do a team warm up together at 10. Game starts at 11. Cricket day is 11 till 6. By the time the game finishes, you do. Probably then, even 20 years ago, people were doing ice baths and recovery. And then by the time you get in your car, you go home. At the time I was living in Oldham, it was an hour away from Old Trafford. Get home at 8 o'clock at night, trying to digest what's happened in the day. All of a sudden, you shut your eyes, go to bed, and then obviously cricket's 4-day cricket or it's 1-day cricket. So it's wake up again, go again. It's just, and then in a blink of an eye, April to September has just gone so fast. And hopefully you've had a good season, but there's so many variables in cricket which can depend on your performance as well.
So it's day-to-day routine's pretty important.
Yeah, the routine at the time, you're just a young lad. You don't know what a routine is. You sort of, because you've always been really good at your own age, you could get away with turning up and just, being, I guess, a good cricketer. Whereas you start playing with professionals who are seasoned, some are international sportsmen. I actually look back now and I look at how they used to practice and train. They had routines that before sort of people spoke about routines, I guess. Talking about Michael Atherton especially, captained England for however many years, and the way he went about his practice was actually no surprise that when he went out to play in a match, he performed, because he was sort of he gave himself the best chance of performance off the field. And others at the time, he really struggled with his back, and he was the first one that I had to heard of doing Pilates or yoga, and this is probably like 25 years ago, like before it was, people did that. I think, right, cricket is a team sport, but you are on your own. It's an individual, it's your career, and I think that's what took me a long time to realise. Like, sort of, you're in and around some, people who are very good at the jobs, and you sort of compare yourself to others, and you want to be like him, you want to be like her, or whatever it may be. It's actually what makes you really good, and can you make the best of your ability. So that can be, it's when your mates are ringing you like, oh, there's something on Friday night. It's like so easy to be like, yeah, that's all, you go along with that, but is that helping your career? There's a sport career is, I think the average for a professional cricketer might be similar to football, is 3 or 4 years if you're lucky. So you would only get one chance of it. And majority of sports people, when you finish, like I found retiring at 31, actually a lot of my friends were 10 years into careers there. So I was actually finishing my career going into the bottom of the ladder of whatever I started next, where my friends who, like I said at the time, they're at university struggling, actually when they get to 30, they're flying. Their careers are looking after themselves. So you've got to be very selfish in a way of, not that affects the team or how you are as a person, but you've got to do everything you can in your world to give yourself the best chance. People always associate, I guess, cricket, they don't do anything, you just stand there, do you need to be fit? But I think, in today's game, you can be from any sport, any walk of life. You turn on TV and watch T20 cricket, they're serious athletes, the fit, the strong, the fast, and if you're not doing it, there's probably 50 lads or girls who are doing it. What I've found in cricket recently is you might be with some of the best players in the world, but they still have self-doubts themselves. They're not just robots. It's actually sometimes the lads or the females at the top of the tree might have more self-doubt than anybody, but it's just that they've got coping mechanisms that when they get on the field, they can deal with it. I think sleeping cricket is huge because it's such a long day. Cricket is 6 hours, but you've probably been at the ground an hour and a half before, like say you're there an hour after. It just gives you the best chance of recovery. As a bowler, which I predominantly were, if I'm bowling 20 overs in a day minimum, obviously you get back, if you're staying up till 11, 12 at night, your sleep's broken because you're shattered, and then you're getting up the next day. If that sort of increases the risk of injury. Obviously, if you get injured, someone else comes in the team, they replace you, they might come in the team, do really well. Then when you are fit, it's hard to get back in the side. The cycle of the mental stuff is, did I give myself the best chance? And a lot of the time, I think a lot of the things you can control yourself, but it's just being aware of what you need to do. And, I think we're all guilty. Like when I was in that era of, you'd never be saying at 8 o'clock at night, oh, I'm going to bed now, I've got a big day tomorrow. It was like, you joined the older players, you stayed in the bar, you had a couple of drinks, and you actually look back now and it's like, it was the wrong thing to do. But it's hard being a young player in that environment to sort of stand up for yourself a bit. Whereas now I think the environments are so good, you just watch how England go about their cricket, everything's about, the mental side, the mental well-being of players. Especially the international players are probably away for 10 months a year playing cricket. And their recovery and the sleep is probably the biggest thing that they'll talk about. Probably when I got to 26, 27, I was well aware of professional cricket, it's really good, but it's probably similar to rugby union, probably lower league-ish football, where you get paid all right, but you're not retiring when you finish unless you play, for England for a long career. So I always had one eye on what I'm going to do when I finish playing. Obviously, I'd left school, no qualifications, got a couple of GCSEs, signed as a professional cricketer, brilliant. Then all of a sudden, you start getting to the back end of your career and you think, what am I going to do? So a real good friend of mine, he was in a big band in the 90s, in Spiral Carpets, then worked when the band finished having record deals where they get paid monthly. He was in a similar position, he had to get a job, so he went to work for SJM Concerts, which is Simon Moran, who owns Warrington Wolves rugby, and so I knew Simon through rugby and stuff. So I just said to Graham Lambert, said, can I come and just shadow you in the winter? Don't want paying, at Lancashire you're on 12-month contracts. And it was just to basically one, try something new, and two, like think about what I potentially might do. Because I think I've been involved in cricket so long, I felt like I just needed, when I was done, I just feel like I need to get away with it. But if you've only ever been in a dressing room with 30 lads for 14 years, how do you know what you're ever going to do? So basically, I went to work with Graham a bit in the winters. You know, I remember the season finished on the Friday, and he looks after Stereophonics at one of his bands. So we were starting at Manchester Arena, and so he's like, right, come with me for the whole tour. I think it's like 5 weeks, all arena tour. So in my head, because you know I love gigs, always been to going watching bands, and I just thought, you know, what time we must get there, like 6 o'clock at night, because surely they just turn up and plug the guitars in on stage, and you know they play the concert. And I was like, so what time do we have to be there? And I think for that arena tour was 5:30 in the morning, loading, they call it. So that's when, basically when you get to any arena, it's just an empty shell. So you'll get the riggers coming in first, they'll be like lining everything up for the lighting people and the sound and everything. So like, I was like, 5:30 in the morning, what we're doing at that time? But then you get there in the morning, there's probably 10 trucks turn up that they open the doors, and then it's just like a load of, you know, like when you see ants on programs, and there's just people everywhere, and everyone's doing a different job. And so it was actually really interesting to see like how the concert day works, like what people are doing, you know, because every day is a new day. It's not like sport where I guess like, you know, worst case scenario is something happens, you can kick off or start the game an hour later. Like, you know, the band has to be on stage at 9 o'clock, no matter what. So it's, and I think coming from sport, you're used to dealing under pressure, you're used to, you know, speaking to people. So it's actually a lot of it is just, you know, asking questions and not pretending to know things. That was the first thing I learned straight away, is like, never pretend like you know what you're talking about if you don't, because like if you make a decision in that world and it goes wrong, like it can be catastrophic, not only like health and safety, like financially, you know. So it's so it was just good to just see how things worked. And obviously went on tour with like the band, not on the band bus, but we were on our own, like with the crew and stuff. And you know, you, like I say, you get in venues at 5:30 in the morning, band probably come off stage at 11. By the time they go and see whoever's at the show, and you know, they meet their people, shower, get on the bus, probably 2 in the morning, and like the next morning you could be at London, you could be at Newcastle, Cardiff. But because it's such a buzz of the day, because it's so long, it's so hard to get to sleep, you know, when you get on the bus. Then you find you're just having 2 or 3 hours sleep, and you wake up 5:30 again. You just open it, you don't even know where you are, and it's bang, you go again. And you just get into this routine of doing 18-hour days, day in, day out. And it is relentless, because even, I mean, it's hard for the artist, but they'll probably sound check at 3 o'clock every day. So even if an artist is going to bed at 7 in the morning, they can still sleep from 7 till 3. Whereas, because we're the promoter, we're in between band, venue, trucks, lights, sound, agent. You've got to make sure everything works. So you don't actually get, you know, like a normal job, you have your lunch hour or whatever. There's no such thing, because there's someone coming to you all day, every day. So, but you do get used to it. And it was just, yeah, really interesting. Did that for 3 off seasons, and then retired, I think May of when I was 31. And because I'd done the 3 years previous, I literally just went straight to work for Simon Moran. So I like went from being in the dressing room at Lancashire, played my last game, and then the next month, you know, I was looking after like loads of artists that were like sort of mine. And it was really interesting. Like a lot of them, I was with them from the first ever gig. They sold like 12 tickets, and then you fast forward 12 months, they're doing arena tours, they got #1 albums, and you sort of go on the journey with them, similar to coaching. Like you're sort of with them, but you're not on the stage like doing it. So I did that for 8 years. You know, sort of loving it. It was really hard, but it was really interesting at the same time, working with people I grew up admiring. Then all of a sudden you sat in the dressing room with them, just chatting to them, and like, you know, they're asking you, what did you think of that gig? And in their head, they're like, it was rubbish. I'm like, well, man, it's 15,000 going berserk for you. But it's similar conversations that you have in sport. It's like, what, you know, there's so much self-doubt in them, like, is unbelievable. And I guess in that world you can throw in alcohol, drugs, people around who probably they're not got their best interests at heart. So you find yourself a lot of time sort of building their confidence, which you would as you did in sport.
They do where they help themselves.
Well, I think like from what I've seen in that world, because every person who works with a band or artist, they're getting money out of it. So their interest is telling them everything they want to hear. So for me, it was like, I get paid a set wage no matter what happens. So, and I've always been like similar in sport. I just tell them what I thought, or sometimes not what they want to hear, but actually the truth. And then I think they really respected that. And then, you know, some of them, I'm still like really good friends with them like today, and I've been out of music for three years, and you know, they'll still text or ring and ask me certain things, and I think that's a reflection of coming from sport and I guess being in that type of environment. Then obviously COVID happened. I was away with Blossoms. We were in Southampton, about to start the gig the next morning. The lads were like, "Oh, someone said COVID's like everything's going to get cancelled," and we were like, "It won't affect music. We'll be fine." And then I remember like the next morning, it was like everyone home, and then overnight. Lost my job. I was self-employed, had a limited company, I couldn't claim on any of the things. Luckily, construction was still going. My mate was building a massive school in King's Mac over in Prestbury, and I had to do like, not the unthinkable, it's probably the wrong thing, but like I basically said like, "Can you help me out?" And he's like, "Have you got any work boots?" And I was like, "No, but I'm sure I can get some." Did a CSCS card and went on a building site for a year. But do you know what? I actually enjoyed it. Like I used to cycle there 10 miles, do a full day of graph, and it was funny. Some of the people I work with, like our lives would never cross, but it was brilliant at the same time. You know, some of these lads have been inside for like some naughty things, and some lads just made wrong decisions and ended up just, you know, going down the wrong path. And it was good crack. It reminded me of being in the dressing room again, doing a hard day's graph, and then cycle home, and probably the fittest I've ever felt. And it was just that period of my life where, you know, I could have asked other people for like financial help, but it sort of goes against like what I'm about, and did that for 12 months. And then in a weird way, ended up going into Old Trafford doing a little bit of coaching just to tidy me over really. And then ended up doing more and more coaching, and I guess ended up being full-time back at Lancashire, having been out of it for 8 years. Yeah. So it's, but I think all the things you learn as a player and being away from cricket were massive. And I actually now, when I go back into cricket as a coach, like I feel really fortunate and lucky and just enjoy it. You know, it's such a great position to be in, and I've actually seen the other side of what people do for a living. So I can never go in and be like whinging about training for 3 hours.
That you've worked with, well, that's on you if you want to mention them, but you're like, how have you done all of this stuff? And you're still just like, yeah, but I'm just Kyle.
But the names, they're just names, they're just people. Like, you know, these artists are like, you know, I guess, you know, being on stage, Foo Fighters are playing, Coldplay. But to me, it was Dave Grohl's he's good at singing, playing guitar. Once that gig's finished, he's sat in his dressing room like we are, scrolling through his phone, waiting to go and get catering some food, get in a bus, go to the next venue. So it is a job. But I think, especially today's world of social media, we build people up into these things that they're pretty much not. And seeing that side of them, it is quite sad sometimes, because you do see them in a pretty low place. It's amazing that you can go from that to that very quickly in the music industry, and then when they are on the slippery slope, a lot of the people who've been around, they're nowhere to be seen. And I think that's what I've always tried to be in sport, is like, even when people are struggling or they're out of the game, that even, you know, try and speak to them. Because I know, like, actually, when people reached out to me when it was hard, it gives you a good confidence boost. Me and Fred have been real close since I was 16, coming into Lanc's dressing room. He sort of, I guess, took me under his wing as a young lad, always looked after me. You know, I grew up in Oldham, he was in Preston, similar sort of towns. Like, Fred came from nothing, council estate, you know, played cricket, which was sort of the uncool thing to do from where he came from. I guess he was super talented as a young lad, played for England young, and as everyone knows, you know, he's had his sort of issues as a young lad, and came to a crossroads in his career where he could have gone left or right, and one way might have been an early finish to his cricket career, one where which he took the right path, got his head down, and, you know, he I always, like, when I always speak about it, I actually don't know what he's become these days. I always think of him as a cricket, but he's become this, I guess, superhuman person who we just see on TV doing amazing things. Yeah, and like, you know, he's had his real struggles the last few years. But when he wanted to make a cricket team in Preston, you know, he rang me and said, like, if I'm doing it, you're doing it with me, sort of thing. And you know, it's not my world, that at all. So I didn't have a clue what to expect. That's the first thing I said was like, I'm not being filmed or anything. He's like, and before you know it, you get into it, you get with little kids and you see you're actually making a difference to them. And it's not about cricket, it's about showing, I guess, interest and compassion to kids who have just got everything stacked against them. And, you know, it actually shows, like, it's just pot luck what you're born into. You know, you could be born into some rich family in the middle of all the edge, or you could be born into, like, what some of the kids have been born into in various other places where they've got to fight for everything, you know, that they're going to earn, or, you know, even going to school is a hard option for some of them. They don't have the parents or siblings behind them pushing them the right direction. So, but the Field of Dreams, it was amazing. And then obviously we ended up taking the lads to India, which was life-changing, not only for the lads, but for me and Fred as well. You know, it was the first time he'd been away since Top Gear. You know, it was the first time I'd been away doing something like that, other than being on a cricket tour. And then, yeah, it just seems to keep, you know, we're doing another series of it, which will be really interesting. Some interesting parts to this next one. And going to the BAFTAs in 2 weeks, which will just be hilarious. Like, because that's not, you know, my world whatsoever. You know, because it's funny, like, being around sports people or musicians doesn't interest me one bit. You know, I just see them as for what they are. But, like, I guess being at the BAFTAs, being around people who you watch, like, and it's not even like, nothing against Corrie and EastEnders, it's not that world, it's like, you know, movies and people that are recognised all around the world. I think, you know, I went a couple of years ago, we didn't win, but just to be in, like, you're at the bar and, like, Cillian Murphy stood next to you and people, like, you know, things that you watch as, it was just surreal, really. So I think to go back this time with a really good chance, like, whether we win or not, sort of irrelevant, but with a good chance of winning, it'll just be a good payoff for all the hard work that's gone into it from everyone.
Words out of my mouth, there's literally saying, but it's your hard work.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily just me and Fred, you know, like, you actually, the team of people, you look at the production company, you look at, like, you know, majority of them live in London, they're coming up to do an hour's filming in Preston, they've got families, you know, it's, there's so much more to it than, I guess, like, me and Fred see the good bit of, you know, what's on TV, but, like, as you'll know, like, what goes on behind the scenes to put an hour on TV was just, it's like, it's actually really good to observe, like, how people go about it, especially Naomi, the woman who's in charge. She can film something and, like, she knows what it'll look like on TV, and it's like, that is just, you know, that's someone at the top of their game. That to me is like your Joe Root going out to bat, or your Cole Palmer playing football. It's like they've just got that something a bit different than, I guess, everyone else has.
Were you ever nervous?
Yeah, it's awful, absolutely awful. You're so self-conscious about what you're going to say, and you forget the mic's on a lot of times, so you've got to be careful of, like, well, I don't know, it's just a weird world. But I guess the good thing about Field of Dreams is it's very natural. You don't have to, like, tee each other up for conversations. It's what you see is what you get, and it puts life into perspective as well. You know, a lot of things that we think are super important, that a lot of people do, material things, are irrelevant. You know, it's like, actually, if someone's got a roof over their head, they can pay the bills and they can survive, that's all they want. I think the main thing in any habit in performance is, whether that's office, sport, whatever it may be, consistency, I guess. I think in general, as human beings, when we see success, I think that's when we take the foot off the gas. Then it's like, oh, actually, I wanted to get to whatever weight it is, lift whatever in the gym, or run a certain distance. And then when we do it, it's like a sense of achievement. And then we sort of, yeah, we've done that, so I don't need to do it anymore. And then I think that's where people, like, you just see it, don't you, in all walks of life, people yo-yo up and down, and, you know, they're doing really well and they're struggling a bit. So I think, you know, in anybody who's really good at something for a long period of time, they're just consistent in what they do. So it's, even when you're having your good days, you don't get above yourself, think you've cracked it, but you know, when you're struggling and you find it hard and you can't be bothered getting out of bed to do something, actually, that's, if you can get out of bed and make it happen that day, that's like a massive win. So it's just being consistent and keeping like really achievable goals. I think, you know, in life, people, you know, probably to do with social media, we compare ourselves to people which are just, it's probably not achievable, and you know, we set goals that are too far away. So it's, you know, keeping it really small and clear, and when you've hit that goal, another little one coming up, and then over a period of time, you know, you form good habits, good lifestyle, and you probably see, you know, more success in whatever you're, you know, involved in. I guess like skincare routine in cricket is probably like, you know, as blokes, we never talk about it, and you never want to be in the dressing room in front of the mirror in front of the rest of the lads. So, but I think it's huge as well. I think, you know, cricket's probably got the most chance of skin cancer out of most sports, because the amount of time you're outdoors. A lot of the times you think it's not hot, and so you don't actually use your skincare, especially when you're playing abroad, you know, when it can be grey and overcast, cloudy, and then you come off after a day in the field and you're like burnt to, especially in, like we've just been in South Africa this winter, the UV in South Africa is like really dangerous. So it's one of them where you've got to sort of take it upon yourself. But it's, I think it's, as most things, it's coming more and more like acceptable to be looking after your own skin, because, you know, you actually see the effects of not looking after your own skin, and, you know, it can be really dangerous, in fact. So obviously, you know, the products were unbelievable, but I've not been able to get my hands on most of them. My missus I can't get the mask out of her, you know, hands. She has it on morning, night, so she swears by it. And I think, like, obviously, not just saying it, but she's used a lot of these things, and she's like swears by it. And I think for, you know, she won't mind me saying, a female early 40s, you know, they're so self-conscious of the skin, and, you know, she uses it morning and night. So it's, you know, that's been amazing for her, and for me, it's more just, you know, the moisturiser. I think, you know, as I mentioned, being outside all the time is just something easy that you can get into your routine without it taking up, you know, a lot of your time, and something you don't really need to think about. You know, it's keep it in your gym bag. I keep it in my cricket bag, and in my wash bag as well for when I'm travelling away with cricket. And I'd like to think I've seen a bit of a difference. Hopefully, design one that gets rid of a few greys at the same time. But yeah, it's I think it's just something it's just dead easy. You can use it, and you don't feel out of place, you know, using it wherever and whenever it may be. I think as I've obviously got older, I was very like, you know, when you're younger, you think, oh, sun's shining today, you're going to get a nice tan. Whereas now I'm the complete opposite. Even, you know, we had a game yesterday, it was freezing and windy, but I still put sun cream on, because, like, I don't know, it's just, I find with windburn can be as bad as sunburn sometimes, and like, you know, you find your lips are chapped all the time, and then, you know, once they start cracking, and then I don't know, it's probably a thing I talked about before. It's like getting in that routine of like, no matter whether, and it probably comes from playing with a lot of Australians and South Africans, like, you know, played with so many of them, and it's like sometimes it's freezing and they're putting loads of cream on, and you see them with a zinc, and you're like, what are you doing? But like, they've been in that world of the sun, and it's like, as good as it looks sometimes from putting a bit of colour on your skin, it's, you know, it's you got to be really careful with the sun, and, you know, being cricketers, you're just exposed to it more than anybody else.